Hi everybody, my name is Jim Egan, and I'm going to start by asking you all a question. By show of hands, how many of you have ever had a nickname? Alright, good. Keep your hands up. Anybody had a nickname? Next question is, how many of you were not that crazy or wild about the nickname? Hands up. Okay, how many absolutely hated the nickname? Alright, several of you, so that's where I'm going to start. I grew up in Appleton. I went to Appleton West, and my first year there was 1972. It was a September day. I'm with my buddies, and there was a park by Appleton West we'd go to on nice days to have lunch, play frisbee, things like that. We'd go to Linwood Park, and on this one day I'm with my buddies, and we're sitting around having lunch. We're sitting at a picnic table, and one of my buddies starts staring at my head, okay? And he's just like, he goes, and back then we didn't say dude. I don't think that word was invented yet, but if we had, he would have said, dude, your head is gigantic. And then all the other guys start looking at my head. Go, God, he's right. Your head is just so big. And now in their defense, I think at that time in my life, I was like, well, if you've ever seen like a lab or a golden or a doodle when they're a puppy, a lot of times their paws are gigantic compared to the rest of their body. And I think that might have been the way it was with me in my head back at that time. But anyway, by the end of that lunch, my buddies were all calling me Big Head. Okay? Now, as you know, anytime you get a nickname that you hate, it spreads like wildfire. Okay? So by the end of the week, every kid in the school that I know is calling me Big Head. And I'm just like totally hating it. And then one day, like in the next week, I'm at home, and I'm kind of having a pity party for myself. And my dad looks at me and he goes, you know, Jimbo, it could be a lot worse. And I go, how could it be worse? He goes, well, they could have called you Boogers or Stinky. And I'm thinking, And you know what? He was right, because my friends Booger and Stinky won't let you call them those names today. Okay? I don't know where they got that nickname. But anyway, point is, I'm really bumming out about this. And then a couple weeks later, maybe in the third week, I'm in band class. And this girl that was a friend of mine came up to me and she goes, you know, Big Head, you really hate that name, don't you? I said, yeah, I hate it. It's the worst possible name. She goes, I don't know why you're such a baby about it. I think it's the coolest name in school. Boom! When she said that, my brain changed. It flipped, because I wasn't capable of seeing it as cool. I just saw it as the worst possible name a kid could ever be called. When she said that to me, it just changed everything. All of a sudden I started liking it. And before long, I was loving it, and everybody, I love it when people call me Big Head, okay? So, and the reason I start with that story is to point out a couple things. In that, note that you were given, or the description of what we're going to talk about, one of the things it talked about was that change is going to be constant in your life. And that's like kind of a mini example, because I went from not having a nickname to getting one I hated to turning into one I absolutely loved within about a 3-week period of time. Okay, and it was just dynamic change. Over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, your lives are going to change like crazy. Okay, and it's things that how you manage that change will have a big impact on how things turn out for you long term. So when I went from hating it to loving it, it became the best nickname ever. And to this day, all of my friends from high school still call me Big Head, and I think it's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm going to go from that to talk about why I'm here today. I wrote this book, The High School Graduate's Owner's Manual, it came out in 2016. And again, I want to, number one, thank you all for taking the time to write out your questions. I've gone through them before we started, and they're awesome. And I'll get to as many of them as I can. And in the end, we will have a question period. And if I miss something, definitely ask me then, or as we're going along. If you have a question, raise your hand and we'll address it. But the inspiration for the book, that was one of the questions many of you asked, was it came to me when I was in a Hallmark store looking for a Mother's Day card for my mom. Now, a little bit of my background, I worked for Hallmark Cards for 10 years when I first got out of college. And I graduated from Appleton West, then I went to school in Madison, graduated, and then I went to work for Hallmark Cards. When I was in this Hallmark store looking for a card for my mom, and I hadn't worked for Hallmark for over 20 years, I always walk around the store because I'm always curious what they're doing. So I walked through the store, and I noticed the graduation section. So I walked over there and I started looking at all the graduation presents they have. And all of you are going to be getting graduation presents probably within a few weeks or whatever, okay? But I was looking at them, and I was thinking, these are all very nice, but what will they mean to that high school graduate a month after they get it? Will they ever go back and look at that owl with the little mortarboard on it, or the little plaque that says, hey, you did it? They're all great, but do they have any lasting value? And my thought was, my inspiration was, what if there was a graduation present that had significant value for that graduate, way beyond the $50 or $20 bill you may get in a graduation card? My thought was, there ought to be something out there that can help an 18-year-old with what lies ahead for them. And the perspective that I brought to this and that I want to share with you is that what the book, and you're all going to get a copy of it, and when we get done today on the way out, if you want a copy, they're on that little bookcase over there. If you don't want a copy, that's fine too. But anyway, the thought was that if I'm in my, well, I hate to say it, I can't believe I'm this old, but I'm over 60 right now, okay? And as somebody who's a 60-year-old plus, if I could share with an 18-year-old what I know, would it change your life, okay? Because most people, the things I talk about, it takes them years to figure it out. Some people don't figure some of this out till when they're in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. I know I didn't, okay? So my point is, the concept behind the book was to try to share something of value with people that are in your position in life, so that as you go ahead, you might make better choices when opportunities present themselves. So the next thing we're going to go into is I'm going to ask you another question. Does anyone know who Dr. Aubrey de Grey is? Has anybody ever heard that name? Okay. Dr. Aubrey de Grey is a really smart dude, okay? And he looks like he's smart, okay? Recently, he did a TED Talk. He's a scientist, and the topic of his talk was that the first person that will live to be 1,000 years old has already been born. Think about that. The life expectancy in the United States 100 years ago was approximately 54 years old. Okay? The life expectancy now, give or take what you look at, is approximately 80. Okay? 50 years from now, the life expectancy will probably be well over 100. Okay? Why is that? Dr. Aubrey de Grey, his concept is, if you looked at the automobile, 100 years ago there were automobiles. They were built to maybe last 5 to 10 years. Okay? Yet some of them are still on the road today. Why is that? The reason is because they developed tools, technologies, and science to basically replace any part in a car. He looks at the human body the same way. He looks at aging not as a process but as a disease. And how do you impact aging? You replace the parts that are worn out. And he goes through about, I think he has 7 different examples. I'm not going to go into any of that. Because again, as we go through today, I'm going to give you stuff that's on the surface. It's up to you to drill down and kind of look for more information if you have an interest. But my point with him is, if what he says is true, or even if somebody's going to live to be 500 years old, 200 years old, would that affect how you looked at how you did things from this point forward? Okay? And as we get into today's talk a little bit, we're going to talk about some financial issues. And all of those things mean a lot more if what Dr. de Grey has to say has any chance of being even close to possible. Okay? So with that, we're going to move on to one of the topics that we talked about, or that was mentioned in that sheet you were given. Okay? How do you pay less for everything you ever purchased for the rest of your life? Okay? And it's tied to your credit score. How many of you know what your credit score is? We got one in the back. Okay, how many of you know how a credit score works? Okay, we got a few. Okay, I'm just going to explain it real easy. There's a range on credit scores from 300 to 850. I hope nobody has a 300, and I know nobody has an 850. It's in the range in between. And as you see on this graphic, on this side, under 560 is considered very bad. Okay, bad credit score. As you go farther up the scale, okay, things get better. How a credit score works is when you need to borrow money, okay, if you're going to get a credit card. Within probably a year or two, all of you will have a credit card, okay? A credit card is essentially a little piece of plastic that gets you a loan anytime you want it, okay? Many of you already have debit cards, okay, where you're taking out your own money, okay? With a credit card, you're using somebody else's money. Credit cards can be great, or they can be the biggest pitfall you're ever going to fall into, and here's why. This happens to a lot of kids when they go to college. You're there, you go to the first football game of the year, and there's all these overly happy kids with bright t-shirts on saying, hey, sign up for a credit card, and you get this cool t-shirt and blah, 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 all that. Well, what happens is you get a credit card. If you don't understand how credit works, and you have a low credit limit on it, like $300, $400, $500 bucks, you go out and spend it. Go get a new stereo, get a new iPad, get a new whatever, and then you got to start paying it back. And if you don't make your payments promptly on time, all of a sudden that's affecting your credit rating, okay? The other side of the coin is you get a credit card, you make small purchases, and you pay it off in full every month. Because now you're starting to establish your credit rating, your credit score. And why this is important, I'm going to go to an example about a car. How many of you have a car? Okay, a lot of you have a car. How many of you bought your car? Okay, so you know how the process works. The dealer has a price. And I'm going to use an example here. No, too fast. Okay. I use this particular car because that's what I drive. 2013 VW Passat. Okay. This car only has basically 24,000 miles on it. Costs 10 grand, and it's on the internet right now. Okay. That is a screaming good deal. Okay. Now, if you have good credit, you pay $2,000 down. Your monthly payment would be $187. And at the end of your 4-year loan period, your total cost would be just about $11,000, okay? And you'd own it free and clear. If you have bad credit, that exact same car with your exact same $2,000 down would cost you almost $3,000 more, okay? And that's an example, literally, of how credit works, in that you will pay more for everything if you have a bad credit score. And it's very easy to get a bad credit score if you're not aware of it. So my point in this area is to look at credit as an opportunity, but it's going to, as we get into a couple more things, it's going to make you're going to hopefully see the importance of really mastering the concept of what your credit score is and how to protect it, because it's the most valuable thing you actually have. And over the course of your lifetime, if you look at cars, houses, other investments you may make, your credit score could save you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. Okay, it's huge. So if you take nothing else away from today, know what your credit score is, know how to protect it, and never take it for granted, because it will come back and bite you. Now, how do you get someone else to pay for where you live for the rest of your life? And several of you had questions regarding that, like, why is that good to be able to have somebody pay for what shouldn't you pay for yourself, kind of a concept. And this is paying for yourself, but it's a smart way to do it. A lot of what I talk about in the book and what things today are things I might have been told when I was much younger. Maybe a little older than you, but not that much older. But nobody ever told me the why. They're like, Jimbo, save your money, do this, do that. Jimbo, buy a duplex, don't buy a house when you're ready. They never told me why. So I'm going to tell you why, because that's what matters, okay? And on the duplex, or on the how to get somebody else to pay for your rent for the rest of your life, it's simple concept as there's going to be a time for most of you probably that you're thinking about buying a house, okay? And when I was at that stage, I was, I think, 26 or 27. Time to buy a house. My wife's uncle told me, Jimbo, you ought to look at buying a duplex, because then you're going to have somebody else, paying, part of it, I didn't ask questions, he didn't push me on it. Like, I'm not buying a duplex, I want a house. So I bought a house, which is fine. But had I bought a duplex, this would have been over 30 years ago. I would now have an asset that would be almost 100% paid for by someone else that would be worth several $100,000. Instead, I bought a house that I lost money on when I sold it 4 years later. So my point on this is there's a strategy involving duplex. And this also ties back to your credit rating. If you have a great credit rating, okay, it's easier to get a loan at a good rate that's going to make this a better deal for you. And I use very simple numbers in this example, okay? So we're saying your first duplex, or assume the monthly cost to you as the owner is $1,000. And I just use that as a round number. because when you do get into buying your first duplex, you want to buy as much duplex as you can for a couple reasons. One is you're going to be living on one side of it for probably 5 to 6 to 8, as long as you want, but you're going to be living there. So you're going to be living in a nice place. Secondly, the nicer the duplex, the more duplex you can afford, the better tenants you're going to get. Okay? When you can charge a rent in today's market of $1,000 a month or more, you're going to get a much more responsible, much less disruptive tenant than if your rent was $300 a month. Okay? So you want to try to push that up if you can, because you'll be getting to people that are more responsible, maybe have better jobs, maybe are willing to take better care of where they live. So that's something to keep in mind. But with this strategy, at your first duplex, your cost is $1,000. You're charging $750 a month rent. So your tenant is paying 3/4 of your carrying costs for that property, and you're paying only $250. What you should do in that situation is charge yourself that $750, take that extra $500, and put it in an account to buy your next duplex. So you start saving. The other thing you're doing with this is you're building a relationship with your banker. You're establishing to them that you can handle a mortgage and that you can pay it on a timely basis, okay? By the time you're ready, then you go for your second duplex, okay? Again, you're charging $750 a month, so between the two duplexes, your costs are $2,000, but you're taking in $2,250. Now, if you're, again, following this concept of you're still paying your own rent to put toward your next duplex, now you're putting away $1,000 a month to get in your next duplex, okay? By the time you're ready to get your third, now your positive cash flow is $750 a month, and again, plus your $750, it's $1,500 a month. And one of the things I talk about as we go through this is enforced savings, that you force yourself to save. And it's not for a rainy day so you can go out and blow it on something. It's to build your financial foundation. And again, go back to Dr. DeGray. If you're going to live to be 140 years, you sure the heck don't want to be working for 100 years. What you want to be doing is creating cash flow, creating assets that basically create a revenue stream for you, so at some point you're financially free, and we are going to talk about that. Okay? Next thing I'm going to jump to is how anybody can become great at almost anything. And I think this is a really important point for people just starting out at your age, because again, in the next few years, you're going to be exposed to a lot of things. What I encourage young people to do is find something you're interested in and go into it knowing you're going to suck at first. You're not going to be any good at it. Maybe you are, but you're not going to be as good as you're going to get. The way you get great at something is you stay with it. You start out. I'll use me as writing a book. When I wrote the book we're going to have available today, I had no idea what I was doing. Okay? There's so many elements that you just don't know till you do it. But I got into it, and I'm working on my second book right now, and I think my second one's going to be very successful because now I know all the things I didn't know when I started out. And I found that I really like writing, I love writing, so it became something where I looked at it and said, okay, I've learned these lessons, so now when I go to my next book, I'll be able to incorporate that and it'll be better. And just for some examples, I had a publisher when I wrote the High School Graduates Owner's Manual. It's a vanity publisher. What that means is you pay them to publish a book. They don't pay you, okay? And again, I had no idea what I was doing, so I asked them some questions, though, and it turned out the person I was working with didn't know the answers to some of the questions either. A specific question I asked was, how long should the book be to be commercially viable? Okay? She said, well, your book's geared toward high school kids, and a lot of them don't like to read, so it shouldn't be that long. Okay, that's the wrong answer. The correct answer is 175 pages. Why is that? Because then it has enough spine to show up on a library bookshelf or a bookstore bookshelf. And the other point was, the customer for my book is not any of you. It's your mom, your dad, your uncle, your aunt, someone like that, some adult that cares about you. No high school student would probably ever buy my book, because they're going to buy something fun. Okay, they're not going to buy a book. But again, the publisher I was dealing with didn't pick up on that. The other key question I asked them is, what does it take to make a book viable for a library? In my thinking, there's 26,000 or so, give or take, high schools across the country. They would probably all buy the book, a couple copies for their library. okay, and then you look at all the municipal libraries. I figure even if I can't sell 10 of these to the general public, I can sell a ton of them to libraries. And they said, well, it's got to have a nice cover, you got to make sure you spell everything right. This person had no idea. The answer is it has to have an index, okay? She didn't know that, so I didn't know it. And I went to a publicity thing in New York City right before my book came out, where I was actually talking to people that actually knew the answers to all this stuff. And it just blew me away. So the point of it is, I was terrible at this concept, at the concept of writing a book, because I had no idea what I was doing. But I did it anyway, I enjoyed it, and now next time around, it'll be much better and it has a very good chance to be commercially viable. And just another, to take this example one step further, I want to talk about somebody that started out terrible and ended up being great, and probably most of you know who this person is. Okay, Bart Starr is the quarterback of the Packers. He is the only NFL quarterback to lead a team to 3 consecutive championships in the history of the NFL. That's huge. Up until a few years ago, he had more championships than any other quarterback till Tom Brady passed him. I think Tom Brady has 6, Bart Starr has 5. Okay? Bart Starr was a 17th round draft choice. Okay, how many rounds in the draft today? Does anybody know? 7, you're right, exactly right. There's 7 rounds in the draft. He was 17th, way back when, okay? Packers were the worst team around. His 3rd year, he was the starting quarterback. They went 1-10. But he hung with it. He stayed with it. He worked at it. The bullets I put on there is, again, find something you want to do, focus on it, want it, and do it. Put the time in. Anything worth doing takes time. It takes practice. It takes being bad at it until you can get great at it. Okay? Get help. Find a coach or mentor. And this is huge. I understand you have several business people that come in from time to time. They're coming in here because they want to help young people. They want to see you be successful. People like that are out there everywhere, and whether it's in a job or in an educational setting, whether it's a banker, these people want to help you. They want you to be successful. Take advantage of that. Next point, don't worry about the money, and I'll give you an example of that. When I was younger, I was a crazy baseball fan. Okay, I used to go to at least 20 Brewer games a year. Some years I'd get up to 30 or more. I was working for Hallmark at the time. I wasn't making real great money, and I really loved baseball. So when I got back to Milwaukee, I sniffed around Milwaukee Brewers to see if they had any positions for a marketing guy. They did, but they didn't pay crap. But I should have taken it because I loved baseball. I wasn't making that much money doing what I was doing, and I didn't like it that much. And you start out in something you love. If you work hard, you're going to get noticed. And there are people in those organizations at countless levels that you start out, you learn the business. You bring no value to that business until you understand it. But once you understand it, then you bring your own ability to innovate and basically improve the situation. And that's when one of my biggest regrets is I didn't go to the Brewers, because I could have got a job with them. And even if it was like cleaning out the locker room, so what? You were in the organization, and you go from there. So that's a big point about success in life, is finding something you really want to do and do whatever it takes to get into that business. Last point is never give up. And again, Bart Starr, one of the best examples I've ever seen anywhere out there of somebody that was terrible at something, or was in a terrible situation, but he didn't give up, he stuck with it. Then a coach named Vince Lombardi showed up, Bart Starr was ready, and things took off from there. The stars aligned for them. Okay, now, this one is one of my favorite concepts, and I want all you guys to, this is doable for every one of you. You might not be able to read this cartoon, so I'm just going to go through it. First one, panel is, guy saying, I've been saving 80% of my paycheck and no longer need to work here. Boss says, you're only 35 years old. Are you retiring? He says, no. The cash cow couple call it financial freedom. Okay? And there's a way that every one of you can get there, and it's about investing and being smart with choices you make. I'm going to go into that. How to become financially independent at an early age. Start saving as much as you can as soon as you can. And to that point, it's about making savings as a habit. Okay, whether you can only put away $50 a month, start there. Find a way to save $50 a month, but do it every month. Okay? Reduce or minimize expenses. one of the questions in the deck today was about, how long should I live at home, or should I live at home, or whatever. And I'll give you an example of that. Today's college kids, a lot of them go into huge debt when they go to college. In my view, there's nothing wrong with debt as long as any debt you go into makes you money. Okay? If you look at college today, if you're from one of the STEM disciplines, science, technology, mathematics, one of those areas, there are jobs out there that are going to pay you great money when you graduate from college with one of those degrees in science, math, engineering, one of those things. If you're going to college and borrowing money to go there, and you're looking at, I don't want to slam anybody's favorite interest, but if you're looking at sometimes if it's theater, if it's some of the humanities, some of the English, unless you're going to be a teacher where you'll do okay. But if you want to go into one of those areas where there's not great demand, when you come out of college, you could be $50,000 or more in debt and end up working at Starbucks or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with working at Starbucks. But my point is, smart decisions about money start now for you guys, because it starts to count. And minimize expenses. How do you do that for college? Maybe you wait a year or two till you earn some money, so you don't have to borrow as much. Things like that. Living at home again another year, another 2 years if it's possible, and saving that money, like in that example where the kid says he saved 80% of every paycheck. That helps you create a foundation that again leads to things like having the down payment to get into that duplex that now has created an asset for you for the rest of your life. Adopt an investor mindset. And the next point is get help from a professional. Like in each of the high schools, I think there's a Community First Credit Union office set up. Is that correct? It's a great idea to get to know a banker. And you could go to that office and say, I'd like to meet with one of your bankers because I'd like to get a financial plan together when I'm just starting. They would love to have you there. They would help you. And getting that relationship with a banker is going to help you all along the way. If you're going on to school, getting a relationship with your professors helps you all along the way. Because everything you're going to find in life as you go forward, it's people to people. Okay, no matter if you're... Pardon?
I just wanted to say, if you see a financial person, it usually doesn't cost you anything.
That's right.
And that was one thing I didn't realize till I was older. And the other thing, too, is even if you have made a mess out of your finances, those financial people are very used to that.
Yeah.
And they will help you figure it out, and they'll look at you and, your unique situation. So that was something, like, my parents never did that. So that was something we found out from just talking to other people. But we didn't start going to a financial person until we were in our 30s.
That's a great point. And you think about it this way. You decided it's time to buy your duplex. And you're going to need to borrow $100,000, $150,000, but you can cash flow it, make the point. You're going to a bank to get the money. Again, using the Community First example here, if you had talked to them when you got to know somebody, when you go in and say, I need $150,000, they're going to, oh, okay, great, come on, sit down, Bob, let's talk about it, how do you plan to do this? As opposed to, they don't know who you are. Hey, I need to borrow $150,000. Yeah, okay, and I mean, it's two different animals completely. So take advantage that they're here if you want. Go talk to them. Like Ms. Hazy said, there's no cost. They'd love to see you, and they're going to help you. And again, it's something that's there for you to benefit from. Last point, learn how to have your money work for you instead of you working for your money. That really is the essence of financial freedom, is when you get to a point where your money, your investments, are making more for you than your job is. Okay? That's the point. You're at the start of being financially free. And so the next question I have for you is, how many of you know what the rule of 72 is? Anybody? Well, this is a big one. Okay, we're going to talk about this. This is an investment rule. What the rule of 72 is that if you divide the return you're making on your money into the number 72, the number you get is the number of years it'll take you for your investment to double in the stock market. Okay? And let's understand this. Okay, I'm going to talk about here. If you somehow came up with $5,000 by the time you were 20 and invested it, And it's not you saying, oh, I'm going to pick stocks. It's working with a professional to help you, get diversified, get in the proper areas. By the time you were 63, that would have doubled 7 times, 6 times it would have doubled. Okay? Think about that. And here's a bizarre stat. If you were around in 1900 and you put $1,000 in the stock market and left it alone for 100 years, in the year 2000, or if you invested it in 1900 and you left it right until the year 2000, its worth would have been 19.8 million. Okay? That's one stinking $1,000 investment. Okay? It's unbelievable. That's the power of time, and that's what you guys have. Okay? When I come into a room like this, I've got something none of you have. I got a ton of experience. But you have something that's much more valuable than what I have. You have a ton of time. And if you can do smart things when you're young, take advantage of what most people don't figure out like this till they're 20, 30, 40 or more, you've won the game. Because again, and now the other thing about this example, okay, this is one stinking $1,000 investment that went from $5,000 to $320,000. Okay, if you're following the guidance given today, you're in an investment habit, so you're investing every year. Okay, so think about, again, if you can only come up with $1,000 at first, okay, by the time you're 25, okay, you're at that 5,000, so this will happen. But again, if you keep investing over that period, you will definitely be financially free by the time you're probably in your 40s. And again, if you're going to live to be 150, 180 years old, that's pretty cool. Because what it means is, for the rest of your life, you can do things you want, not things you have to do. And that is an incredibly cool concept. So, Rule of 72, and again, this is based on a 10-year or 10% annual return. The stock market in the last couple of years, the return has been over 20%. Okay? So that means with your Rule of 72, your money is doubling every 3.5 years, every 4 years. I mean, that's crazy. But that's the power of time that all of you have. Okay? So I'm going to move on. And now we're going to move on past the financial stuff because there's a couple other things we wanted to get to before we get to questions. Okay? And how are we doing on time?
So we have the first hour is done at 8:22, so
okay.
about 15 minutes.
Okay, great.
And there's a bell that will ring at about quarter after that is like a 5-minute warning bell.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Your reputation. We talked about what your credit score is. Your credit score basically is a black and white way to tell someone who might loan you money if you're going to pay it back, or what are the odds you're going to pay it back. Your reputation is very similar. Your reputation always gets there before you do, okay? And it tells people if you're a person that has credibility, character. It tells people if you're a good person or not. The problem with a credit score is, or with a reputation, unlike a credit score, is you can't control it, okay? It's what other people say. It's not based on a black and white number, okay? One of the things that young people get in trouble with is what they do online. And I know you're all thinking, big head, we already know all this, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. When you put something online that, for whatever reason, shows bad judgment, it stays out there. When I was your age, we had something called the permanent file, which was a manila folder in a file cabinet tucked away somewhere that if we did anything bad in school or anything like that, it was in there.
You guys still have that, actually.
Oh, you do have the permanent file? Okay. I'd hate to see mine. But anyway, my point is, it went away. It wasn't searchable. It wasn't easy to find. Nowadays, anything you guys do, anybody can find it. You all know that. So the only point here, without beating it in the ground, is to just say, be aware of that. Think before you post, especially something negative or something that could come back and bite you 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Because you all know this. If you apply for a job or anything else, the first thing they do is look at what your social media activity is. They Google you online to see who you are. And so you want to keep that as clean and as positive as possible. Especially watch out for Twitter. So many people put so many terrible things on there. And it doesn't help you. And I want you, going into the next thing besides this, is to think about being a great person, okay? Talk about giving something back. Throughout your school age years and all that, probably several times you've done things in the community, whether it was a class project, whether it was a service club you were in or things like that, whether you were in the Scouts, okay? People that volunteer, that do for others, when you ask them, why do you do that? Almost always you hear the answer, I do it because I get more back than I give, okay? I was a Scout leader for 8 years when my son was going through Cub Scouts and into Boy Scouts. And I didn't do it because I wanted to do it. I did it because nobody else would do it. And I wanted my son to have a great scouting experience. I had no idea what I was doing. But I got help from other dads, and we made a commitment that we were going to make this the best scouting experience for our kids as we possibly could. And if our kids had a great time, so would all the other kids. And it was one of the coolest things I've ever done. And again, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't want to do it. But once I got into it, what I got back was so much more than the time and effort I put in. That was one of the most worthwhile things I've ever done. And so as you go forward, I want you to keep that in mind too, because it's not just about being financially successful. It's not just about having a nice duplex or a nice house or having somebody else pay for it. It's about being a well-rounded person, being somebody that can help others and that other people look up to. And every one of you can do it. It's just a matter of mindset. Do you want to do it? Do you want to be that person? And I know you all can. So I think I'm going to go to some of your questions. But first I'll ask, does anybody want to start with a question from the talk so far? Okay. All right, this is a question that came up from several of you. You looked at the reviews of my book online, and there's one review that stands out. Okay? Everybody remember that? I got a 1-star review. Almost every other review I got was 5 or a couple 4s. I got a 1-star review. It was someone who said the punctuation in the title was wrong. Okay? And the question many of you had is, well, how do you feel about that? What was that like? And, to be honest, I didn't like it. But it didn't bug me because I had all the other reviews were positive. And here's something that happens when you do something like you write a book. All your friends and family know about it, and they're all telling you how great you are. Oh, that was really great, blah, 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 all that. But what really mattered to me in the reviews were the positive ones from people I had absolutely no idea who they were. Okay, no idea who they were. And somebody saying, this book was great, blah, blah, blah. In fact, there was a Appletonese parent. In fact, you probably know her, Nancy Resner?
The name is not familiar to me, but that
okay.
I could know but that person by sight.
And her daughter was Graceland. Remember that name. Well, anyway, my point is, she was an Appletonese parent, and I did the Appleton Book Fair in 2016. And I get this email from her, and I don't know who this is, apologizing for not being at the open house for the book fair or whatever, and that she wanted to meet me because she had seen the book and she had seen, on the website I had at the time, there were sample chapters. And she said, I think this is the greatest thing ever. So I met her, and again, no idea who this person is, and she was just a screaming fanatic that this is the greatest book I've ever seen. She ended up personally getting about 40 copies sold to parents of Appletonese kids, okay? Because she thought it was that valuable a lesson that was in the book. And that blew me away, that somebody I didn't know came out of nowhere and said, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen for high school graduates. So my point is, into the question, you're going to get knocked down. You're going to get bad reviews on things that have absolutely maybe no connection with reality. And for me, it's so what? I feel the person that reacts that way has way bigger problems than I do when they tell me that my book is terrible, even though she never read the book because the title was so stupid. So that's not my problem, so I can't let it bother me. And I think that you're going to find things like that all along the way. Don't let it bother you. Focus on what's positive, because that's what can help you. Somebody that's trying to take you down, it doesn't matter. They're the one with the problem, not you. Okay? So I'm going to get to another question here. Okay, you all know that I drive for Uber, okay? And the question here is, do you ever have to deal with creeps as an Uber driver? And that's a great question. And the answer is, for the most part, no. I've met some of the most interesting people I've ever met driving for Uber. It's kind of like being a bartender without having to deal with drunks, okay? Because you're just sitting there, you're talking to somebody, where are you from, where are you going, what are you here for? And amazingly interesting people. When I talked at Appleton West, 4 of the kids in the classes had been in my Uber car, which I thought was pretty cool. But no, it's Uber's fun, and again, as you move forward, it's a great way to generate an income. You look at that car example I showed you. That car would cost you $187 a month with your insurance, gas, maintenance. Maybe you're looking at $400 a month, something like that. But if you were in a situation and go, God, I really would like to have a car because of the freedom it would give me, you could make that much money easily in a month driving for Uber, probably, maybe 10 hours a week. So it's another option out there. The economy right now, they call it the gig economy, doing things like that. And I do it when I got a few hours here and there. I'll probably do it after I get out of here today for a few hours, just because it's fun, and I actually like driving, and I get my walking around money that way. So that's a good question. And as I'm going along, if anybody else has anything they want to ask, just go ahead. Okay, somebody asked about should they move out of their parents' house when they graduate, okay? And my answer to that in most cases is probably not, because again, look at where you're spending your money. When you go out on your own, you don't not only have to pay rent, but you got to pay utilities. There's a lot of expenses you don't necessarily see, food being one of them. And if your relationship at home is okay, I'd stay there as long as I could for the first couple of years, go to work somewhere and save that money, because again, we're building toward our financial independence. Again, this is something going back to Uber, I drive around this area all the time. Every manufacturing facility in the Fox Valley has big signs outside that say help wanted, okay? These are not maybe the funnest jobs in the world, but you're young, you should be in decent shape, and it should be something you can do with the thought of anybody can do anything for a short period of time or a fixed period of time if they have a goal in mind where that's going to get them, okay? If you can go out and make 15 bucks an hour or 20 bucks an hour, and most of these places will bump you up if you last 90 days.
Is anyone doing Bemis tonight? They're starting at $16 an hour, and that's that opportunity tonight from 5 to 7. Is anyone going?
Okay, good. Well, my point is, to the question is, if you live at home, you can save a ton of money that can get you toward what your next goal is. If you work at one of these manufacturers, and again, you can work at McDonald's for $10 or $11 an hour. There's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's. McDonald's has probably produced more millionaires than any other company, from kids that started there, working the grill or working the register, that went through their management training, went to Hamburger U in Illinois, and now they own a franchise and they're set, but they're still working at McDonald's. But my point is, there's so many opportunities out there for you that saving money early, again, going back to that rule of 72, any money you can save now is the money that will give you the highest return over the rest of your life if you invest it, because it has the most time to work for you. Okay, so that's a concept. So I think since we're down to 5 minutes or less, one last question somebody asked about how did I come up with the information in the book? Did I know it? Did I get help? The way I write is I get a topic, and I have to be interested in it. I get the topic, I start roughing it out, and then I start filling in the specifics. And at one point in the book I say this: if you don't know the answer, talk to Google, they know everything. Now, talking to Google is, it comes with a caveat, that is, Google can be a little bit slanted in how they present information. So anytime you're trying to put something out there that you want to be credible, check it in a number of different sources. Okay, but as I write, I come up with, I'm going through it and I go, okay, how many rounds are there in the draft? I better look that up. Okay, there's 7. I actually looked that up this morning. I didn't know that off the top of my head. But I knew there were 17 when Bart Starr was selected. But it's things like that. You fill in facts by getting help from the internet. But basically, as you write, you go forward and you just write what you're interested in and write what you know. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Do you have any final comments or any thoughts?
So I just wanted to appreciate you taking the time to come in and do this and be willing to give away some of your books too. That's
Sure.
really above and beyond. So let's give Jim a round of applause. And I really also appreciate you for your audience manners today. So I really appreciate how everyone was respectful.
Yeah, you guys were great. Thank you.